Hello, it's Autism Awareness Month. If you're newly diagnosed, interested in learning a bit about it, or just feel like it, please watch. Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, is primarily a social developmental and sensory processing disorder, meaning it stunts or omits parts from our natural social development and interferes with how we perceive and deal with sensations. Most commonly, this can present as irregularity in sensory thresholds, such as sensations and senses being numbed or reduced for hyposensitivity, and for hypersensitivity may be overwhelmed and overstimulated by sights, sounds, feelings, smells, and tastes. An autistic person can fluctuate between the two and won't necessarily remain on one extreme or the other. We can also get overstimulated by emotional feelings too, as we might not have the natural means to process or express them. And that could be literal as well. I wear a mask because, although I have learned to imitate a smile watching others, I have little to no natural affect, including facial expressions. Autistics will typically consciously or unconsciously mimic and present social behaviors that we don't naturally have in the same way we do language, by interacting with those in close proximity in order to compensate, similar to constructing prosthetic masks because we don't have faces. Using these behaviors is called masking. These learned behaviors can regress if we overstress or don't use them, called autistic regression. Some theorize that the myth of changeling children is based on autistics that had managed to adapt and mask remarkably well in early years of development, but suffered a setback, leading them to lose those skills and, being believed to be replaced by the Fae, left in the woods. There are some who believe that it isn't or not always a born disorder, and think the change occurs due to accidents or vaccines, largely due to Andrew Wakefield, a former honorary gastroenterologist. He claimed to have found a link between the MMR vaccine and autism, after being hired £150 an hour to be an expert witness in a class action lawsuit regarding vaccine damages. 2 years before his paper was published, just before he gathered these 12 vulnerable autistic children, we really knew to collect them already, particularly since he isn't a pediatrician, and their bowel biopsies were, experts said, overwhelmingly normal. Ironically, gastrointestinal issues are comorbid with autism. Former honorary gastroenterologist Andrew Wakefield's findings were retracted and debunked, and he is no longer a doctor. Speaking of comorbidity with autism, other things to look out for are OCD, intellectual disabilities, ADHD, epilepsy, and hard of hearing or deafness. Another common aspect of autism is stimming. Initially derived from self-stimulation, the term is expanded from just self-comforting actions used to create our own stimulus to block out overstimulating and unpredictable external stimulus or lack of stimulus, to also include self-expressive actions used to vent our feelings. So it can include anything from pinching yourself to cope with loud noises and twiddling your thumbs in boredom, to shaking or clapping your hands because you like a song or a show. Autistics tend to be monotropic, hyper-focused on one thing at a time, and unable to process more than that. Though if we are comfortable and familiar with something, we may be able to free up energy to expand ourselves. The reason it is called autism spectrum disorder is because it was merged from autism and Asperger's, with the two existing on one spectrum, and someone's place on it fluctuating. Asperger's was a term invented by Dr. Asperger, one of the bad guys from World War II, for autistics who are functional enough not to be euthanized. It has been used for 60 to 70 years, and with a genetic component to autism, some have had that label in their family for generations. The history wasn't popularized until around the time the two were merged. Still, even with it being an outdated term, some doctors brought in to diagnose are semi-retired, and so it does still appear on diagnosis papers. If you're newly diagnosed or were diagnosed before, it is for you to decide what you are comfortable with. I have a video up about it already if you'd like to take a look. I also have one about my thoughts on self-diagnosis or unofficial diagnosis. If that is how you got here, then you're still welcome. The community can be a great place, whether you stick around to join in or gather what tools we can offer and move on. I hope you have a good journey. If you need more information, you can check my other videos, request a video, or I recommend checking the hashtag #ActualAutistic. This is the one a lot of us use, since former doctor and fraud Andrew Wakefield's fans still tag autism in their posts, and them going off about how autism is worse than dying of preventable diseases is very distracting. Sorry it was such a long one, thank you for watching.